I'm back. Well, what do you expect? It's a bank holiday in England, nothing else to do. So I thought I'd get this amp out and do an inside and outside review. This is a Royal Atlantic that I bought in America, in fact, and had it shipped and all the rest of it. But this one actually had a bit of a fault on it, and it wasn't that difficult to fix, fortunately enough. So now we've got it here working after my little bit of work on it. So this is a 110, 120, whatever it is, voltage that America has. And because it had a fault, I bought it cheap. I didn't like that. And it's going to be good. And I bought it from Capitol Guitars, CAPITOL guitars.com. A guy named Eric Berg. Yeah, nice friendly guy, very helpful, sold it to me at the right price. What more can you ask for from a dealer? You know what some dealers are like. I haven't got time of day for you, but Eric took me all through it and did his thing, and I appreciated that. You know, the Royal Atlantic I thought was very much like an Electra Dyne, but the truth is that it's not a lot like an Electra Dyne. It might look similar on the front, same sort of knobs and that sort of feel and the same sort of channel layout and things like that, but it's far from an Electra Dyne. I can tell you, I've had this one going, and yeah, it's awesome. These settings I've got here right now are where I was playing around a bit, and it has some great tones. This one's set up at the moment for the lead. Yeah, rock and roll. So we're going to have a look inside, as we always do, an inside and outside review. It's quite nice because this amp never really did much work. I can tell from when I looked at it last time, and inside, that is. It's all going to be interesting inside. You're going to be able to see what's cooking. This has got some very useful features that I'll cover as we move through the review, and so you get a real good feel about this amp, because it's not quite discontinued yet, but they do say it's going to be discontinued any time. If it hasn't gone by the time you watch the video, it will be gone not long after, probably. But they still have a combo, but I think the negative on most of the combos is 3 people to pick it up. This is quite nice because it is heavy, but you can get that volume down on it. It's got some things in it that let you do that. So you could actually use this one even in your house. And I'm telling you now, it sounds awesome. Anyway, let's get the chassis out and take a closer look at what we get for the money. Because these amps, brand new, I think they're in the $2,000 odd price range, give or take. And I know that over in England, they were at least £2,100, so that makes them nearly $2,800, which is an absolute rip-off. As I always say with Mesa Boogie in the UK and Europe. Hold on, let's go have a look closer. Isn't it exciting? That didn't take long, did it? Well, here's the chassis. The first thing I like is this nice paint finish on the top. It's all sort of, it'd almost be enamel if it wasn't paint. But it is paint, and unlike the Tony Iommi one that I reviewed recently, seemed to me more like enamel. This thing is like a paint, but it's all very nice, it's all clean. This one was made, by the way, on 28th of May 2013. Yeah, so if you look at this on the face of it, in many ways, if you go and compare the Electra Dyne review that I did, that is there, somewhere there. I do the chimp mode sometimes. If you go and compare that on the general layout, you'll find that it's in some ways quite similar. For example, you have the same number of preamp tubes. You've got an output transformer and you've got an input transformer. Well, what more can you ask for? You've got the tubes. I think, in fact, I know on the Electra Dyne that I had, that had 6L6s in it by default, actually. This one's got EL34s as primary tubes. I'm not sure what the others are yet, but no doubt we'll have a look as we go. So I'll just zoom over the top because I want to show you one or two other things about this amp that you can see on the outside before we go you know, groveling inside and oh my god, what's that in there? Well, here we are on the top of the amp. You can see that it's laid out pretty nicely. It's all nicely finished. It's pretty cool, really. Looks like you got a couple of those are either chokes or there'll be transformers out. Could well be chokes, from what I can see of it. Well, I'll have to have a look a bit closer at that. The power transformer over here on the American version is 561850. That's the 110, 120 thing. And I guess there'll be a European one out there. We've also got the 7 preamp tubes. One will be used as a what's called a pie somewhere. I wouldn't worry. I like Apple myself. If we whiz this out, let's whiz one out. Take a quick look at what you get. The Mesa 12AX7As. So there. Now all I've got to do is put it back. Moving along, we've got obviously the 4 EL34 tubes. We've got a big fat output transformer this end. As I said, this is the power transformer. And we've got this other thing down here, and this is where the amp starts getting really quite interesting, because although it's a 100-watt amp, it's actually got this power soak actually built into the amp. It's not just built into the amp either, it's actually built into all 3 channels separately, which I think is quite nice. So all you really need is one of these big fat things in here that I can see. You'll get to see it later. A few switches and away you go, I guess. Power soak. Very useful. It's got a little fan as well to keep it cool. Very useful when you want to play at low volumes in the house or something. People do that all the time. And this amp sounds just as good turned down as it does turned up. Even with it turned up, you could hear yourself speak over the amp. Awesome. Well, let's flip it over and have a look inside, and then we'll have a look at the front and the back, and that attenuator come power soak, or call it what you will, but very useful. Hold on. Well, there's a general overview of the insides of this Royal Atlantic amplifier, the 100-watt RA-100. Very nice looking amp. Oh, keep it still. Very nice looking amp overall, well made, well put together. You can get problems with them, like I said. You heard me talk about that. But it isn't a particular major problem I had. I'm not going to go into great depths, except to say that there was one, and it was simple for me to fix. Relating to the amp now, let's go and take a look over the power supply side, and we'll have a little look in the middle bit, and then we'll come down this end. Okay, well, here's the power transformer, as you well see. All very nicely laid out indeed. Okay, so if you look at the Electra Dyne job I did, it's all very similar, except that this one's, actually it's a bit simpler, if anything. Oh look, you've got connections on the end, this sort of thing. Actually, this one here comes out of your PT. That one comes from up above, so I reckon that's something to do with the power soak. These relate to power soak, and so does that board just up there, which we'll cover in a minute. So we'll come back to that. Typical of this transformer, there's no way you're going to convert this as standard to 230, 240 volts for Australia, Singapore, UK, Europe. You know, it's not going to happen. You'll need another transformer. Now, I did speak with Tube Amp Doctor, my man Stefan. Hey Stefan, how's it going? And Stefan said, yeah, we ain't got one of them, Tony. But what he then said, he said, no problem, we'll make one for you. And I thought that was quite nice that he's going to make one for me. Not sure how we're going to get around that bit, but we'll see when we get there, won't we? There it is. That's likely to be swapped out. It's got its little greens here for the... they go off down to the board, don't they? And it's all pretty straightforward if you want the truth. So the power side just needs its transformer, and maybe, I don't know, we'll look at the other bits. The Electra Dyne needed a secondary transformer. This may or may not, who knows. And we'll move a bit further forward, as the case may be. These things here, this ribbon and these three here relate to the, well, they call it a power soak, I call it a attenuator really, I guess. It's the same thing, give or take. And that part of the circuit doesn't exist on the Electra Dyne for sure, and that's one of the issues with an Electra Dyne. They're a great amp, but if you don't put a pedal in front of them, you really wouldn't want to be driving it quite as much as it could be driven, which is very loud indeed. So put a pedal in front of an Electra Dyne, that's fine. You don't need a pedal in front of this one. Just trust me on this at all. It's going to work straight away with no aggravation. Now looking at this section of the board, this is the preamp board. Here are the preamp tubes, and you know, as I said before, go and take a look at the Electra Dyne and you'll find this section here is, honestly, it's very, very similar to an Electra Dyne. They probably developed the idea on the Electra Dyne and then enhanced that into this amp later, because this amp followed the Electra Dyne, if I'm correct. I think I'm correct in saying that. So what you lose on this machine, or what you gain on this machine, depends how you look at it. If you take a look at these pots, you'll notice on the Electra Dyne there's fewer pots, it's a shorter amp and things like that. We've only got one set of pots, so let's imagine the pot's at number 12. Well, in rhythm it's physically at 12, but it could be at 10. And when you flip it into the power, you know, the drive channel, the pot could be at 14, but it's still at physically 12. And there's that ratio that's been calculated out by Mesa for the Electra Dyne. Well, there's no such crap on this one. Or is there? I think there might be. What's that switch do there? Yeah. Maybe this one down the end. That's got a couple of wires on it. In fact, it's a dual pot, fancy that. But all the others, except that other gain down the other end as well, actually, all the others are single pots. So you get this these pots for the given channel, and thanks very much. A couple are shared, but that's life. So the Mesa amp overall, just having a real good look across it, I mean, it really is typical Mesa, and it's well put together, it's well engineered, really nice chassis. And if you look at the welding on the chassis, you can see it's nigh on perfect, absolutely perfect. And that's what you expect from an amp maker. Moving on, we have the power tube board down here, pretty much like the Electra Dyne was, I have to say, pretty much like that. And above it we have another board, an I/O board, for all these I/Os across the back. So if you get any problems with that, or you get any problems with this board, you know, the theory is Mesa will sell you another board, and you can keep your amp in business. Well, they might not sell it you, they might sell it to their dealers, because they won't sell it to you typically. And I did just want to show you that, just to confirm that actually the design was 2010. So, you know, the amp's been coming along ever since that. This is a 2013 one, it said. And indeed the chassis is 6/2012. Very interesting. So let's whiz back over to the top and have a look at that attenuator and the way that they did that, or, well, not the way they did it, but what it comprises of externally. It needed to be externally with the heat that them things can actually generate, especially from a 100 watt amp. Yeah, what we have here is this big aluminium housing that they've bolted this massive resistor onto. You can see it's pretty cool. Well, it's pretty hot actually when it's going. And they've got the fan at the other side here. You can see that whiz round. There's a couple of speeds for that, by the way. You can have it high or low. You can't actually have it off, which is an interesting little thing. I'm sure that will go down well in the studio when you listen to the hum. But that's a different story. Right, well, can I see what it is? No, I can't really see what it says. Let's put it this way. It's a great big fat one, and it's a bit like what I saw in the cab clone, only the cab clone one was slightly longer. not much in it, I think. So maybe they, at the same time when they were working on developing this amp, they were still working on developing the cab clone as a separate product. And I know that it's in the Mark 525 and things like that. So yeah, so that was probably developed maybe from this series, from the whole series, from the original Electra Dyne, distorted into this one. Then we've got a power break on this, or power, whatever they call them. I'll call it an attenuator. And then you've got a cab clone that follows on from that. If anything, this amp drives more than the Electra Dyne does. So there's just that much more drive. And if you bring your attenuators in, crank it up, crank the drive, just trust me, there's enough drive for anything. It works absolutely brilliant on that tapping too. I checked that. Let's just cover up the switches and knobs on the front and back while we're here. I think that's a good time to do it. Here we go. On the front of the amp we've got the power, which can be set to 50 watt or 100 watt, which I thought was quite nice, just a flick of a switch. It's all simple. We've got standby off and on, little light telling you what's going on. We've got the multi-soak here, which can be on or off. Nice and simple again. Everything about this amp isn't like a regular Mesa, you know, with thousands of knobs and stuff like that. It's got a fair old selection of stuff, but I wouldn't call it a regular Mesa. Anyway, moving along, we've got the clean channel. Now for the clean channel we've got, you can see it, master, bass, middle, treble and gain. That really covers the clean channel. And it can be pristinely clean, very much like a Fender, I would say that, even with the L34s. But you can fit, don't forget, you can put 6 L60s straight into this amp. We have a shared section EQ for the low channel gain and the high channel gain, not the clean separate, remember. So we've got a master for the high, a master for the low, bass, middle, treble, and we've got at the end here a gain. So it's a singular gain. Remember we talked about the gain earlier on when we were inside. We said, oh, that's a dual pot. Well, sure it is. Fancy that. Moving along to the end of the amp, we've got the clean channel in the middle, low and high. This you can use, put a foot switch in there, and we've got your regular input there. Well, here we are. We'll start at the simple end and get more complex as we go. The amp does have a spring reverb, by the way, and that's where it connects there. See? It's got that other connector there. You can see that, which is exactly the same as the Electra Dyne, that little section there. Anyway, we've got this slave with a level. We move along to speaker outs, 8 ohm or 4 ohm, no 16 ohm boys, bear that in mind. We've got a red LED that comes on dependent on whether we've got EL34s or 6L60s. When you have EL34s, this will be on. We've got a foot switch there, all nice and simple. You know what that is. We've got a reverb that's programmable here, and that's its mix. But then we've got this, we can defeat it. We can have it high and low, or just plain on. That defeats the high, you can see. So that's on all the time, and that's high and low but not clean. And then you've got bypasser on. Pretty simple really. Again, you move along to a loop. It's hard bypassed when not in use, says very clearly. So there's got a send and return and thanks very much. That's all you get on the loop. Got a fan speed low or high. Note, there's no off. Bit weird. HT fuse. And then we come to really the exciting part of the amp. No, not the end. These three here. So what we've got is we've got a high, a low and a clean. And these are the attenuator settings. They call it a multi-soak. It's just a trademark name. But it's basically an attenuator that makes your amp drive more with less volume, really. Less output volume. So you've got a number of settings. We'll look at this one at the end. We've got 0 dB gives you 100 watt, -4, -8, -12, -16 dB will give you 3 watt. So you've got everything in between there. Quite a lot of settings, quite nice. I don't think it's as nice as the power soak that was on the Marshall YJM-100, for example. That was really cool, and that was continuously variable. None of this like this. It was just continuously variable. Really an awesome design that was. This is still good though, and don't think that it doesn't do the job, because it does. What I like about it is we can vary this for each channel. Okay, that can be very, very useful. You can have real great headroom while the driven channels are really cranked, and they're not really much louder. Well, they're not any louder if you want it to be that way. I'm back. Well, that's the back of the amp too. It's back. So I'm going to whack it back in its case, and then we'll go a little bit further with the ins and outs of what this amp's all about. Yeah, hold on. Just one last thing just before we do actually put this back in its box. I'm always enthralled, that's a great word, by how Mesa talk about how robust their equipment is, and you know, it fell out the back of a bus or something, and they plugged it in and it was always great. And you know, they do seem pretty robust actually to me. Well, you won't see it from there, but all I can tell you is all their tube amp screws, the screws that hold the thing in, always seem to be bent. They were bent on the Electra Dyne, and they were bent on this one, and this one was in its original packing when it got to England. So come on guys, you can do better than that. You need some decent screws instead of this mild steel crap. Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, bit heavy, but actually overall not too bad. Very nicely finished, I like. You know, not like some of the other ones that you've seen around. You know, the other stuff where the corners are falling off, or the knobs are loose, or particularly the standby flips around a bit, and it's not good. You know, this thing's all, well, quality. It does come, at least I think it does, with a pedal. You know, the sort of thing, typical Mesa. This one says Royal Atlantic. The other one looked, well, I hate to say it, exactly the same as the Electra Dyne. But the Electra Dyne one, yeah, said Electra Dyne on. The funny thing about this, when I talked about the Electra Dyne, I tried to buy one of these pedals for an Electra Dyne here in the UK. I think they wanted £169, or about $235 US for a pedal that's worth about $30. Yeah, unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. That's what I have to put up with here in the UK from these charlatans that screw you to the floor. Anyway, the point is, I ended up getting one on eBay off a very friendly guy over in the States. I forget your name, but whoever you are, thanks very much. And he was in California, and he sold me one for $50. So, cutting a long story short, it basically looks to me exactly the same as the Electra Dyne pedal, because it should do, because a lot of that circuit in there is similar, if not the same. It's similar, I would say. And yeah, it's free, comes with it. You use a regular stereo lead, I believe. Oops, it's got to go in its packet. Let's throw it down there. Well, listen, I recently reviewed a Tony Iommi amp. In fact, it's down there on the floor at the moment. Tony Iommi amp. Great amp. But what would I give this one as a score out of 10? That's a very good question. It's one I don't always remember to do at the time, and sometimes I have to go back and things, but on this one, I've remembered. So out of 10, for what you pay, well, this price was awful, but what you pay for this thing, the fact that it's got this attenuator on it, or what they call this power soak, or multi-soak they call it, I don't know. It's always the same thing. That changes this amp from being similar to an Electra Dyne to something very different than an Electra Dyne. I think this is a superior amp, and so I'm probably going to keep this one and maybe sell my Electra Dyne. There's nothing wrong with that, and that was converted to 240 volts, so it's probably a better bet if somebody wants one. But the point is that overall it's put together really well, and that's one of the things that sort of sways me towards that 7 or 8. And then you've got the sounds of this amp. It can go from really pristine through a real nice light distortion, even on the clean, if you crank it. And then you get into this sort of medium distortion, sort of middle of the road vintage type of sound on the low high gain, if you will. And then you got the high channel, which, you know, has a lot of saturation on it, especially if you use the this multi-circ. So it all becomes quite nice. That's my view of it. So I rate this at about 9. Yeah, straightforward and very simple, 9. The reason it's 9, the last cream on the cake was that multi-circ, and if it didn't have that, then I'd have been putting it about an 8, 7 to 8. So that is the Mesa Boogie Royal Atlantic, inside and out. Ah, it's awesome. Yeah, you need one. They're just not easy to find. I don't think they've made that many of them. Now then, if you want to see a written review, it won't be on my channel yet because I've got about 3 or 4 amps to catch up with. This is my website, www.tonymckenzie.com, as always. And I've got a YouTube channel, because you're looking at some of it now. And the YouTube channel is www.youtube.com/TonyMckenzie.com, no dot. How odd's that? Yeah. Okay, so I want to thank you guys for watching. As always, it cost me a lot of money to do all this crap. And some people are just plain arrogant and rude, but most of you guys are okay. So I want to thank you for watching. And up comes a bit of guitar playing. It won't be dynamic unless I'm in a good mood, but it doesn't really matter. You'll get the feel of the amp and some of the sounds out of the amp, and that's what matters. It's not me that's on. It's not me under review. It's the amp. So when you moan at me and say, "Oh man, you can't play," hey, guess what? Sit on it. See you soon. Rock and roll.